Yo, too, I got a major problem, man.
What happened?
Yo, you know how I moved out to the farm a few years ago?
Yeah.
Man, it's an old rinky-dink house. The roof is falling apart. Siding's coming off the wall. Man, you got anybody I can call?
Actually, I know exactly the person for that, for roofing and siding, and they can do your house, residential and commercial work.
Really?
Yeah, they're called Herizon Builders. They're started by local Hmong guys here in the Twin Cities, and they're your go-to guys.
Really? Hmong owned, too?
Hmong owned, Hmong operated, and bringing value to Hmong people when it comes to reconstruction.
Hey, that's awesome, man. Yeah, because this is something I definitely don't want to DIY.
All right, so I'll get you the number, Herizon Builders.
Yeah, please do. So if you guys have any work that needs to be done on your residential house or commercial building at all, make sure you hit up Herizon Builders. They're a newer company, and they're out there doing a lot of great work. And we're very grateful for them for sponsoring us and just allowing us to kind of continue the work that we're doing here. So thank you. Yeah. Yes, go, yeah.
Yeah, I've had a podcast before, Hmong Womxn Thriving.
Really?
So, but it was just like a passion project of mine. Like, it was super, I don't know, like I reviewed stuff. I was watching Korean dramas, and so I had like, it was just my spot to just like have a conversation because it was like COVID, you know,
Yeah.
and like I had nobody around me. And so, I just like recorded myself and just put myself out there. And I think that was really my stepping stone to Hmong Womxn Thriving. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I put that podcast away a long time ago, but it's always been in the back of my
Was that
head.
also a solo podcast? So, too, like, something really unique is like, Ariel, you do a solo podcast. And I always like, anytime I listen to,
Should we do the intro?
Oh,
and
yeah,
then,
yeah,
do
yeah,
the
yeah,
intro,
yeah.
and then continue
Okay.
right what you were saying.
yeah. All right, so welcome to the Nonke podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Ariel with the Hmong Womxn Thriving
Yes.
podcast. So if you haven't already, go like her page and go follow her. She's putting out some really good content. So you just started in February.
Yes.
You just put your first episode out in February,
Yeah.
and we were talking before we got things going, but you had a podcast before this.
Sure, yep.
One of the things that I think is so cool is that you do a solo podcast. Because if you have a guest or if you have a co-host, you could bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, for sure.
But to just talk into a mic by yourself
No, for sure.
for an hour, right? That takes a different set of skills. Because like Tu and I talk about this all the time, where it's like when we first started podcasting, it took us a long time to learn each other's conversational styles, to fill in like that space.
Yeah.
But you do that solo. So like, do you just like to talk, or like, or did you develop that ability?
No, I'm a big yapper. I've always talked
Okay.
so
Okay.
much. I work in HR right now. I'm
Okay.
a recruiter, and so I don't know, like that's just kind of who I am. I talk every day. I talk all the time. Like, you know, some days it's just like, okay, Ariel, like be quiet, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But that's just not who I am.
But that's a
so-
skill to be able to like, for as much as people say like, oh, some people like you talk too much,
Sure.
but if you learn how to take that part of you and then do something with it, it's a
Right.
skill, right?
Yeah,
because some
yeah.
people it's hard to get like words out of
Sure,
them.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so like for that works. Like if you work
Yes,
at a computer,
exactly.
if you're an IT guy, you work at a computer, you
Yeah.
don't have a lot of meetings. Great, maybe that works for you better. But like it sounds like you're in a position where it's a job that fits
Yeah,
your personality
for
too,
sure,
right?
for
Because
sure.
HR, you got to talk to a lot of
Yeah,
people,
exactly.
and recruitment. That's all you're doing. So which fits right in line with your
Yeah,
podcast. So,
exactly. Yeah.
but let me ask. I know we were just talking about it a little bit before we started the
Sure.
podcast. So your previous podcast, what was the premise of the previous podcast?
Oh my gosh, it was. I don't think I had anything. Like
Okay.
it was just me talking
Okay.
to the
Yeah.
mic. I would review Korean dramas.
Okay.
I would talk
Hey.
about like my mental health.
Yeah.
You know, it was
Yeah.
like pure COVID time, right? And like
Yeah.
I wanted to have an outlet where I could just talk about how I was feeling, and
Yeah.
so I had just gotten into my relationship, and so just
Okay.
talking about relationship advice and stuff like that
That's
too.
awesome.
So yeah, that was just what I did, and I think that's why I wasn't able to pursue it long term. Like with Hmong Womxn Thriving, I have a goal, and I
Yeah.
have like a topic that I want to
Yeah.
continue to talk about, right? But with my other podcast, it was just like la la la, like you know, like just
Topical,
yes,
anything,
exactly.
current events, yeah.
So,
No, yeah, and that's something that Peng and I have talked about before too, where it's like as long as we remember the why as to why we started the podcast, then it's kind of easy. Like for him and I, it was always kind of similar to you, but more tailored on Hmong's men's health initially, right?
Yeah.
Now it can go anywhere around
Yeah.
outside of that circle. It's fine. But if we run out of ideas, we know that we can start talking again about like, hey, how you been? How you feeling?
Yes.
And so we always have, like you said, when you know. And a lot of times when you make it, like yours is in your title, Hmong woman. So
Sure.
Hmong Womxn
so
Thriving.
now it can
Yeah.
be anything
Yes.
as long as it's Hmong woman.
Yeah.
And even Hmong men can
Oh,
come
for
into the
sure.
picture
Yeah.
because
Oh, for
they're married to
sure.
Hmong woman.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're absolutely right that when you have a narrowed, just from your title alone, when you're narrowed, you know what you're going to talk about versus I can only imagine that if I did a podcast without a focus in mind, it would just it would be all over the place and
Yeah.
and then people don't
ADHD to the
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
people
For
don't know
sure.
what they're listening to you for,
Exactly.
right? It's hard to like,
Exactly.
oh, I'm tuning in and today's dude's talking about farm animals, and next time I tune in, he's talking about computers. Like,
Sure.
Yeah.
I gotta
Yeah.
know what I'm listening to,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
and so your podcast now, you started it just a few months ago, right?
Yep,
Okay.
I started it in February. I've actually been dreaming about this podcast
Mm-hmm.
like for as long as I could remember. I've always been so inspired by the Hmong women in my circle.
Yeah.
And obviously, as the years continue to, go on, we've had such amazing Hmong women who like step up and do amazing things,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's always been I've always wanted it to be a podcast. I didn't think I would host it. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of just wanted to bounce the idea to somebody else
Yeah,
and be
yeah.
like, you should take this on,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I felt like it was kind of my calling, and like
Yeah.
I had been itching for a passion project too. Like,
Yeah.
I'm someone who always needs to have her hands doing
Mm-hmm.
something.
Well, just from our short interaction, it makes sense that you're hosting it.
Oh.
Just, yeah, I mean, you're so bubbly
you.
and,
Yeah.
you carry a conversation well and
Sure.
super
Oh,
talkative and
thanks. I
outgoing. Like,
appreciate
so
that.
I think you are the right
Thank
person
you.
to host
Thank
it.
you so much
it makes
for saying
sense.
that. Yeah, I don't know. I still have imposter syndrome, right? Like,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
always like, am I the right person to be reaching out to these people?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, Hmong women are just so caring, and
Mm-hmm.
they're just like. I'm excited that I have a platform where I can just talk about them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have to talk about anything else. They don't have to talk about their kids.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about their career if they want to. But if we just want to talk about them, if we can shine the light on them for them to have
Yeah.
just like an hour of them like
Yeah.
being able to just be like, oh yeah, I'm proud of myself for doing this. I'm proud
Yeah.
of myself
Right.
for getting over this, And I'm like, okay, like let's talk about that,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talk about your creative process. So when you bring on a guest, so there's kind of no agenda. Do you just kind of take the conversation wherever it goes, or do you have set questions for them?
I think so. I do have set questions. So my first season, I only have 11 guests, and they were women who I have already followed or I have already interacted with, and I just wanted to talk about what they were doing. So, for example, I had Nini Li Zhang on
Yeah.
my podcast, and she is an entrepreneur, and she's also a social media marketer, And so we talked about that during her episode. Like,
Yeah,
we
she's
talked
killing
about,
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like what she does for her business, but also, both of her businesses. So her jewelry business as well as her marketing business, And so I just tailor my questions around that. We talk about my one question that I ask all of my guests is. Oh my gosh, it's fleeting my head.
What does it mean to you to be a Hmong
Yes,
woman?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry,
exactly.
I
No,
binged it a
I
little
love
bit.
that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. What does it mean for you to be a Hmong woman thriving, right? And so
Yeah.
then they get a chance to talk about themselves. Then
Mm-hmm.
they get a chance to talk about all the amazing Hmong women in their community,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've been having so much fun, and I don't really have like fun questions or anything like that, but I also think that it's built into the questions that I ask them already
Yeah.
because they're so
Yeah.
passionate about what they're talking about,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And so you said you have 11 guests already. So are all your episodes shot already?
Yes,
And then
yep.
so you're just putting
I'm
them
just
out.
editing them and creating some content around them. But yeah, I mass recorded
Okay.
December, January.
Okay.
And then I just started putting everything out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always ask because we we're today we're shooting 4 episodes. We're trying to line up
Sure.
because Tu and I are both super busy.
Yeah, of course.
And so we're trying, our schedules have to line up, and then our guests have to line up. And so, I'm always curious as to how people
Yeah,
do things. Like,
for
are they
sure.
shooting every week? Because we used to shoot once a
Yeah.
week, and that gets to be a lot
Yeah.
too, just because it's a lot of travel
Yeah,
time.
and I think
Yeah.
for me too, it's like when you shoot ahead. So I'm neither for or against either one.
Yeah.
The creative
For
process
sure.
is however you want to
Oh,
do it.
for sure.
But I do like sometimes when it's more like closer to the time that you release it, because sometimes in the conversation you inherently speak about present things. And so when someone listens, it's nice for them to know,
Yeah.
like, let's say I was talking about some current event that just happened yesterday. It's relatable to that exact present in time.
Yeah.
Versus when you pre-record, sometimes in your conversation, you're going to inherently speak of things that are current events, but that now are outdated by like a month or two
Right.
or
Sure.
three, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing, like in my head, I always think about like which one is better. But then realistically, because we're just human beings with lives, it's just easier to bulk. Like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
bulk,
Oh, for sure.
record,
Yep.
and then that way you have your content, and that way if you time release it, you're good for like multiple weeks, right?
sure.
So.
Yep.
And it's also easier to line up a bunch of guests and
Yeah.
you can just switch shirt in between every single guest and
Yeah,
just
it's-
it's like a
For
new
sure.
episode, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
That's the creative process of like how do you choose to do it. But yeah, just on this topic, sometimes I'm on the fence too because I do like when conversations are released closer
Oh,
to the
for
actual
sure.
date
Yeah.
that it was shot.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've learned that throughout like the last couple months. Like I had a guest and they had a couple events that just happened recently, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it would have been great to talk about those events too,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, I'm juggling school. I
Yeah.
go to school full time.
Okay.
I work full time, and
Yeah.
so I'm like, oh, like it was just so much easier for me to bulk record. And yeah, like you said, there's so much pros, but then there's also a couple
Yeah.
cons
yeah,
too.
and credit to you for putting in the effort. Like at the end of the day, like you said, full-time school, full-time work,
Yeah.
and you're still finding some free time or whatever available little time you have left. You're finding it to create a passion project, like you
Yeah.
called it, and so that's really cool because Ping and I are both
Yeah.
not only podcast hosts just like you, but we're business owners too, and
Oh,
so
for
we
sure.
understand like we're already all very busy, and so whenever people like you commit some time to do extracurricular things like what we're doing is obviously very relatable to us,
Yeah, yeah,
and
totally.
so
Yeah.
we know how it's a lot of
Yeah.
work.
And I guess like it kind of depends on what your podcast is. Like if you're talking about current events and top
Yeah,
things,
right.
then
Very
like
true.
If you're talking
then
news and stuff,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you definitely want to be present. Yeah,
the
Yeah.
nice thing with guests is as long as like you said, they're not dropping anything, like you're kind of hearing their story, and if they're just telling their story, that can
yeah,
that can come
that's
out at any
timeless,
time.
right? That
yeah.
can be anytime.
Yeah. You talked about going to school, and
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
you're currently working. What are you going to school currently for?
So I'm getting my bachelor's degree in human resources.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
I'm currently a recruiter. But yeah, I've put off school for a while. I actually
Okay.
just finished my associate's degree, and so now I'm trying to finish my bachelor's degree. But yeah, I mean, I put off school for like a year, almost 2, I think.
That's
Okay.
not that much.
Yeah. That's not.
I
Yeah,
feel
Don't
like
don't
it
don't
is.
don't put too much pressure on
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
That's not
yeah.
too bad.
But
Well,
yeah.
our last guest, we talked to a teacher who's a friend of ours
Yeah.
who, he didn't. I think he went back to school at like 22 or
Yeah,
something.
there is
like
no
that.
right time.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think we put the pressure on ourselves,
so.
right?
Yeah.
So we all say like, "Oh my God, I've been out for 2 years," and then, but some people will wait 10 years and be 100% sure,
Yeah.
and some people will go right away, but just doing it because
For Right. sure,
that's
yeah.
what you're supposed to do.
Yeah,
So
totally.
Like me.
there's no, whatever fits your
Yeah,
timeline.
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So bachelor's in
Bachelor's.
HR, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And you're currently already working in HR. What is the end goal?
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess
that's
that's
cool.
That's an
You don't
unfair
have to
question.
know.
That's an unfair question. Yeah,
No,
I'm
but
sorry. Yeah.
that's a good question, but that's an
Yes.
even better answer
Yeah.
Yeah.
because you don't need to know.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know. I feel like as I've been in the corporate world, I've been at my role for about 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So I obviously want to hold space for women, but Hmong women particularly,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like the industry that I am is very predominantly white, and it is predominantly white woman, and
Yeah.
so I feel like it would be and I've networked and connected with a couple Hmong women who are in the HR space, and I feel like we all agree like it's very much not a diverse space, and HR we do hold diversity and equity.
Yeah, that's part of
And
HR.
so
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to juggle the two when you're
Yeah.
a white woman and trying to talk about.
Wait, who
diverse,
HR's
you know.
HR?
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
no, for real.
No.
Like, does anybody HR
They're-
HR? Because
No.
you need somebody to HR HRs.
The
Yeah.
HR to the HR is the CEO. I
Okay,
believe, you
okay,
know?
yeah.
So, so yeah, I mean that's something that I'd love to dip my toes in, but I feel like I still have a long way to go, so
Yeah.
we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, and take your time.
Yeah,
And
it can go
I'm
anywhere.
sorry for
Like
that
we
question.
we've both
No, don't be sorry.
we've both have done career switches already.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
now, yeah.
I went to school for kinesiology.
Oh, wow.
Then I worked in nonprofit management. Then I went to corporate,
Sure.
and I left all of that to just farm.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love that.
And
Yeah, and I went to school for public safety was my first one. Then I switched to criminal justice. Never finished school. Became a firefighter full time, and then I thought that was it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a firefighter till I retire.
yeah,
9 years later, I was like, nope, I'm gonna come do my business. So it just there's no right or wrong. I
Yeah.
think you're always gonna switch, or not always, but
and your 20s is I always say like your 20s is it's the time of discovery, self-discovery. Go out there, dip your toes into everything.
Yeah.
See what you like, see what works for you, and see what makes you feel the most wholesome.
Yeah.
So I think 20s is. I think you were right when you said earlier. Sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to like figure things out in our 20s, but like 20s is.
But it's almost
Yeah.
like the double-edged sword is that we have to, right?
Yeah.
Because if we didn't, then we would just chill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Which there ain't nothing wrong with that per se. However, in this country that we live in, you do have to put some importance in a career that's gonna pay you a livable wage, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I can empathize with you at 24. You're like, I gotta get shit done. I gotta get
for
it.
sure.
Gotta
I know,
get
I'm
through
like-
it. So.
people are always like, when do you rest? And I'm like, I don't, but
Yeah.
I also enjoy what I'm doing too.
Yeah.
That's good.
Like, I know some people like aren't corporate people, but I
Yeah.
do enjoy the space that
Yeah.
I am in, and
That's good.
I think that is what continues to like push the wheels, for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
So yeah, I do really, yeah.
And so with your podcast, you shot. You said you got 11 of them lined up. It's like, how did you? And you said so. A lot of these women were women that you already knew or kind of like admired or
Yeah.
like appreciated some of the things that they did. I forget where I was going with that.
Well, how did you find? How did you select your guests, and then how was the process reaching out? Because like we get asked a lot because we about how we get our guests, right? And there's never really the most honest answer is just DMing them, right? But
Yeah.
like, how did you select your guests?
So I follow a lot of Hmong women. Like
Yeah.
I was like on my Instagram one night, and I was like,
Yeah.
dang, like every one post that I've seen has just been Hmong women. Like
Yeah.
no advertisement, no nothing. Like it's just Hmong women, right? So I kind of just took my Instagram list and like wrote people's
Yeah.
names down.
Okay.
Obviously starting out, I'm like, I don't know if I should like reach out to this person or this person. So I kind of aimed on the side of I should reach out to people that might say yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's kind of how I went about it. I emailed a couple of them, and I did DM a couple of them too. But I really went in with like being very intentional, right? Like I didn't want to just be like, hey, like you should come through, right? Like it's like, hey, like I have this podcast. I'm super excited about this. Like, would you be, willing to be a guest, to talk about yourself? And I felt like it was like 90% of the people that I asked did say yes,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, like this is great. And honestly, I came into Hmong Women Thriving thinking that it was just going to be one season, like one and done, you know?
Yeah.
But I've already had so many amazing Hmong women
Yeah.
like reach out to me and be like, I'd love to be a part of this, you know?
Yeah.
Or I'd love for you to interview my mom, you know? I'd love
Yeah.
for you to interview this person, you know? So I don't know, it's getting a lot more traction than I thought it
Yeah.
was, and it feels really good. So I'm excited for season 2. I have a lot of different ideas, but
Yeah.
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 I think we found that too early on. And one thing I always say is like, I think the community is starving for this. I think especially English speaking Hmong talk shows,
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
you can say. And I think there's so many great stories out there that are just looking to like put their stories out.
Yes,
And there's
yes.
not enough like places where they can go and do it.
Sure.
There's like Hmong radio, Hmong TV.
Yeah.
But even those are like primarily like Hmong speaking, and as far as like English speaking Hmong content creators, or I guess like shows,
Sure.
there's not too many of those,
Yeah.
and I think there's like there's a need for it, because I
Yeah.
think when we did it, ours like it kind of built up into this, like
Yeah.
it kind of, once we started, we got a lot of traction, and then we were like, all right, I guess we just ride hard this way.
sure.
Like, and so I think I always say there's like a need for it. And
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
and so seeing all these new podcasts sprout up everywhere is like kind of cool, because
Yeah,
there's a lane for everybody.
There's a lot of Hmong podcasts, but yeah, like it's nice to just have many Hmong podcasts, because just like anything in life, you select the ones that fit with you, right? So some of them you'll listen to. Sometimes people won't like you, or won't like me, or won't like Peng, just for
Yeah.
the sake of for how you look or who you are or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's people who will also listen because they like your message,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
sometimes it's
Exactly.
your friend, sometimes it's a stranger.
Sure.
Like, as long as you're doing it, putting the content out there,
Yeah.
creating it, being true to yourself,
Yeah.
like, yeah, if it picks up, it picks
Yeah,
up. If it
for
doesn't, it doesn't.
sure.
Like I always
Yeah.
told Peng, we have to remember it is just a passion project. So let's treat it as such.
Yeah.
for
Let's
sure.
not get too caught up, because
Yeah.
depending on your personality style, sometimes it's easy to, for me too, it's easy to start treating it like an endeavor,
Yeah.
as opposed to just a passion project.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so I think that's probably the harder part, but I think it's exciting. I like that we can talk about podcasts and have that in common, because we put it out there in the universe, and there's probably someone else listening who's like, oh, I also want to do a podcast.
Yeah.
So for them to find out, like, how do we go about finding guests, for example? Like for us, we just we just DM people, and I think the fear of like, will I get rejected for asking somebody who's done what I feel like is a lot more than I have done? Do I even have the credentials to ask this person
Right.
whether
Yeah.
or not I can interview them?
Yeah.
Like, I think I just want to tell whoever's watching that it is exactly what we're talking about. Like here, you just ask. Like
Yeah.
they'll either say yes or they'll say no.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe they'll say no and it'll hurt your feelings a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's just part of
Yeah.
it, you know. And most of them, they will say yes.
Yeah.
And then some are busy, and you just have to understand
Yeah,
that. And
exactly.
Yeah.
so yeah.
And so when you were asking, did you even have like a concept, or like, because you asked before your first episodes even started coming
Sure,
out,
yeah.
and so like there was no like proof of concept or anything like that, you know what I'm saying? And so but people were still willing to jump
Yeah.
on, and they were receptive
Yeah.
towards the idea.
I think so. Like I said, I asked very intentionally, and
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like an outline that I
Yeah.
sent to them, like kind of what I wanted to talk about with them.
okay.
And so obviously it wasn't just like, can you do this? You
Yeah,
know, but
sorry.
it was like, no, no,
Because
no, no,
I
no,
hit
no,
her
no.
up just 2 days ago. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing Sunday? Come by."
No, I love the opportunity to talk
Yeah.
about it. No, but yeah, I was like, hey, like this is what I'm doing. Like my podcast is called Hmong Women Thriving. This is what I want to talk about. This is, you know, what I think this is what I think could be great, like from you, right? Like this is your experience, and I'd love to shine light on this. Like, is this something you'd be down to have a conversation about? You know?
Yeah.
And then from there, it was either like a yes, oh my gosh, I'd love to, or it was like a hey, like I'm busy, I can't do this, but
Right.
like, you know, when you come around your next season, let me know, you know. So
Yeah, and I think the fear that we have of rejection and stuff like that, like we have to be realistic that most people are just really nice people, right? Like they're not gonna be like, fuck no, I'm not coming out. Like no one's saying that. Like they're just like, oh, I can't, sorry, or I'm just too busy. I appreciate the opportunity, you know. So that's just how people are. But in our heads, it's like shit. Can I ask
hate
this?
me.
Can I ask this person?
Yeah.
Because I'm nobody if I ask them. But we built those images of people in our heads, right?
Exactly.
Because sometimes that person thinks the same. You know, we all think the same, but we build those. We create the characters of people, right?
Yeah.
Because we look up to them, or we see what they do, or oh my god, they got 100,000 followers. Like we just paint these pictures of what people are, and yeah. So if you're trying to start a podcast out there, just ask people. Like just ask them, send a DM. Obviously, be respectful. Like don't make it sound like it's too nonchalant. Like have a purpose behind your question or why you're asking, and then people do but you guys shoot your shot too with a lot of people, and if you ask 100 and then if you get 50, then you know you got 50.
So. You know, one of the we just had Nikita on the other day. Nikita May. Yes, she's doing so many great things. It was such a good podcast. One of the things she had mentioned was that she asked us kind of like why we invited her, because she was kind of like, usually men's podcasts stick to men's, and the females podcasts, like, you know, they have female guests.
Exactly.
And like, I guess I never thought about that, but for me it was just kind of like, yeah, it makes sense that if we're a men's health podcast, we talk to girls too, because those are our sisters, our daughters, our mothers. Like it kind of makes sense that we have some understanding what's going on in their head, and that they have some kind of understanding. But I also understand why you would have an exclusively men's or women's
narrow
podcast,
lane,
right?
Sure.
And so talk about that, like Hmong Women Thriving. Would you ever consider having a guy on? Can I come on?
Yes, of course.
But like, have you given any thought about that? Because when she brought that up, I had never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, oh yeah, I guess you're right.
You know, I did not mean for Hmong Women Thriving to just exclusively be Hmong women, but I think I wanted it to be a platform where Hmong women could feel safe enough to conversate about what they're going through, right? Without any judgment or any like contradictions. You know what I'm saying? And so I'd love to have. I'm actually thinking about this, even launching like a side podcast within the podcast, you know, to talk about the Hmong men who are thriving in our community.
Hmong men thriving.
Yes,
Heck
exactly. You know, and I've talked about this with my boyfriend, my partner too, and like he is super excited about that too, you know, and that may be something that he takes on, you know, because he is a guy, you know, something we can both co-host, you know, because I'd love to, you know, have conversations with Hmong men in our community about topics that, you know, are topics that we don't talk about a lot, you know, specifically within things that have been popping up on social media, right? Like the Goyi saying their topics of like marriage and stuff like that, like just wanting to know what Hmong men think about
What are they
that,
saying
you know?
lately? What's the latest thing that they think
We're
kind
out
of
of the
said
loop.
about Hmong men?
We're out of the loop.
Well, the latest thing that they were talking about was just like the bride price of, you know, Hmong women who have been divorced or you know, and then their age and just things like that, you know, just wanting to have conversations about that or, you know, certain other things.
Yeah. Because I thought isn't the 5K thing fairly new, or is that's probably old now, right?
I don't know. I think my wedding, I think my dowry is 5K.
Because I remember before then, it used to be like families could set their own prices, and then they came out and said, this is going to be the standard moving forward because some of this is getting ridiculous. So what are they saying now?
You know, I didn't read too much into it because I got very heated when I
okay.
But it was very much so like, if you are a divorcee and, you know, you're from the age of 18 to 24, this is how much they pay for you. And then from 24 to a certain age, this is how much they pay for you. And then at the end, it was like, like, then you have to pay.
Dang.
Like the woman has to pay. You know, and just like talk,
That gets messy.
Yeah.
You know, I think if I was, so like my wife was in the military. She's deployed to Iraq, and she's done shit that's pretty hard for a female. So my wife is very. I think as a woman, if I was a woman, right, I think the Hmong culture has always been predominantly kind of like pushing women down, which I think what you're doing is good. I think that if I was a Hmong woman, I would want to really speak up, because now the Hmong women in America today are just so much more, like they're just killing shit, right? Like when I look at the landscape, and I look at like people that are doing big things out there, through my lens, I see 80% of it is Hmong women, and then there's some Hmong men out there that are doing good shit. But the majority of, if I look at just a lot of the Hmong dudes that I know, a lot of them are not doing shit. Versus Hmong women usually are, and that's because they've been pushed down so much that they have to rise up to prove other people wrong. Where was I going with all this?
No, I appreciate
Where
you
did I
saying
start
that.
this?
Yeah. No, it made sense though. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because like it's so good to be acknowledged by our Hmong brothers, you
Yes.
know, that like you see us and like you see us rising, right? But I think because the OGs in our community are still very much like the Hmong men need to rise up, right? And so I feel like as long as we can have that understanding of like of Hmong men, like seeing Hmong women like thrive, right?
Yeah.
But like also acknowledging that those conversations need to be happening with the OGs, right? Like the OGs need to understand. Where am I going with this?
Here's my question. Yeah, I know we're kind of going all over the place, but here's my question with this: can you really change the mind of an OG?
Yeah.
Because I think that no, most of the time. Some are very open-minded, and some, because there's so much attached to it, where they grew up, how they grew up, what they believe in, like. And Hmong men have such egos most of the time that can you even change their mind? And I've given up on that. Like for me, for some Hmong OGs, I talk to you. As soon as I figure out how you think, if I ask a few open-ended questions and like I can tell that you're kind of close to new ideas, I'm like, you know what? I personally don't see eye to eye on that.
I think that makes sense, because like you can only control what you can control.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you're here worried about stuff that you can't control, you're only that's your own mental health that you're like you're damaging or you're destroying. But because like, can you change their minds? Like, I think it's tough to. I would like to say that it's still worth the attempt, but also just understand that when we get into that position, we have to make those changes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like maybe
you make the change yourself, and that's what changes things around you.
Maybe the fight isn't to change their mind, but the fight is to change the mind of our peers and the people
through our own
around us.
actions. Through our own actions.
And so that when we get into that position, we can make those changes.
Yes, exactly. That's where I
so it gets tough. It gets tough because right now you're hearing crazy things like the whole marriage thing. I was unaware of that. I have 2 young daughters, so maybe I should start looking into that. But you know what? We're not marrying a Hmong guy.
No, Hmong culture, I think is very difficult for if you're a Hmong woman. And I really do think that's why so many are thriving. Is because if when you've been pinned down a lot, you will rise. You know, and you'll rise twice as hard.
And I can also see why some of them just step away from it. Some of them just go.
I can respect it because some Hmong men be crazy.
I think I don't want any part of this. You know, and you know, as a man, like earlier on, I was kind of like, oh, you know, like Hmong culture's so beautiful, yada yada. Like, why would you not want to? But then, like, the more I grow up, the more I talk to people, and where I do understand. Oh yeah, I guess like I can understand why you might pull away from it, especially you know, if it's got a history of breaking you down, tearing you down, and not valuing you.
But then
you know?
in this same conversation, you also have Hmong women who really hold to the tradition too, right? So here we're talking about it in a very progressive lens.
For sure.
But not every Hmong woman thinks like that either.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Like if you go to Laos and you talk to some of them, like we're not all, some are more conservative than others,
Yeah,
right? So like
exactly.
we're just, I think because here we see it in a very progressive lens.
And we're younger.
But we're younger, but you have some young people too that don't.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know, like when I say it's hard to change the mind of an OG, some people I meet are Hmong guys in their 20s who still think like that. So
Yeah.
I guess it depends on how you were
Yeah.
raised and
Yeah,
who taught
for
you
sure.
and who showed you,
Yeah,
right?
for
Because
sure.
when we say Hmong women thriving, I think about it in a very progressive lens,
Yes.
right? So it's like Hmong women doing this and doing that and killing it. But I think we have to also acknowledge like some Hmong women are, are not seeking that. And does that make them any worse or better?
No.
It's
Yeah.
not, you almost can't
No.
compare it like that,
No,
right?
Yeah.
exactly.
It's unfair to, because you're not trying to do a billion things, you're
Yeah.
not
Right.
adequate,
No,
so.
for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I know my wife she's currently going to grad school right now, but for a long time, she's still currently a stay-at-home mother.
Okay.
So she left her career, and I just think about the decisions she had to make to leave her job to be a stay-at-home mother for a little bit. There's no right way of doing it because
Yeah.
if you work, now you're being a neglectful parent. You're not taking
Right.
care of your kids. But if you be a stay-at-home mother, well, now you're throwing away your education. So it's like there's no
Yeah.
winning to it.
No,
You're,
not at all.
you know, and so it is a tough
It's
decision.
personal which one you feel
Yeah.
empowers you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because maybe if your value is to be with my children every day, then being a stay-at-home mom is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and maybe for you, your value is no, I got to get out there and compete with the world and show the world I can do it. Then if that's where your value comes from,
Yeah.
then that's where it's at. But I don't know where we're going with all this, but
Yeah.
with your podcast, I think it's always good for Hmong. I always support Hmong woman movement as a whole because I think Hmong woman movement has just been kind of like stepped on for a long
Yeah.
for as long as I've been a human being, and so
Yeah.
I like to see when Hmong women grab life, by the nuts,
Yeah.
so to say, and
Heck
so to
yeah.
speak, and
Love
to just
it.
say
I love that.
we're gonna show that
Yes.
we got this too,
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, what do you think, Ariel? Because here we are,
Yeah,
two
here-
Hmong men overtaking the conversation
No.
We're
again.
babbling
And
about
like,
No.
like always, like we've done for billions of years, right? You're just like taking up so much space.
No.
What do you think?
No, I really appreciate your guys' insight because it's very important. Like, I feel like I've learned as I've grown up as a Hmong woman, right? Like, that the opinions of Hmong men are very valued. And so for you guys to honor that you see us thriving and you see us grabbing the nuts, and things
Hell
like
yeah.
that, like,
Love it.
I appreciate that a lot, and I think, like you said earlier, Ping, like, it's just about taking it in your own hands and trying to change it the way you can, right? Like,
Yeah.
of course, we can't change people's opinions, right? It's
Yeah.
not going to change overnight, but I think if they see a movement of people do different things, then it'll start to question, like, I wonder why they're doing it like that.
Yeah.
And, that may arise questions that Hmong men can answer for the generations before us, right? Of, this is why we're doing it like this, because we're seeing the change here, right? Because our voices are still kind of voiceless. As I feel like we continue to rise in the community, I feel like there's also push too of like, what are you guys doing? Like, you guys are just supposed to be women, right? And so, yeah.
Yeah. So with that, like, where do you see your podcast going?
Sure.
And right now, you currently, sorry, two-part question. Second part is like, right now you're just audio. Do you plan on having a
Yeah.
video side?
I'd
component
love
to it?
to. I think I just don't have the resources, right?
Yeah.
And so, and like I said, it was really just a passion project. I was gonna invest in super cool equipment like this, but
Yeah.
I wanted to see how the first season. Well, actually, I didn't even know there was going to be multiple seasons, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, now that I know that there's an influx of interest in my podcast, I'd love to invest in more. I just don't know how to go about it, and obviously,
Yeah.
I still am very focused on my education, and
Yeah.
so I'd love to power through that before I even think about
Yeah.
doing anything.
And
else,
like you call it, it's a passion project. So
Yeah.
I think here's me being a Hmong man again, but no, but just as a piece of, I wouldn't even say really advice, but I think if you just keep it passion project, I think the podcast will tell you, right?
Yeah,
The
exactly.
podcast will tell you itself, like, hey, it's time to upgrade.
Yes,
You know.
yes, for
And so,
sure.
yeah, I think and Peg and I, we talked about the podcast for a long time before we even started it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we bought all this stuff, and then in a way, it almost forced us.
Yeah,
Because we
okay,
bought all this stuff, so
sure.
we're like, oh, now we have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus, and I think it's as easy as like I always tell people, like creating content is as easy as just turning your phone on, because
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
our phones shoot in 4K, 8K, and
Yeah.
so, but audio is good too.
Yeah.
I don't think video is always has to be the way to go.
Yeah,
Audio
I
is solid
think-
too.
Yeah, I think video kind of intimidates me just
Yeah.
because there's more to it, right?
Yeah.
But with audio, I think it's just audio, right? Like you just clip and cut.
Yeah.
and then
What do
all
you
done,
think
know?
about like? So I know you. So we're talking about the advantages of audio only.
Sure.
What do you also see a benefit to video? Like
think
when
so.
you watch your podcast that you
Yeah.
watch, do you like to be able to see the facial expression
Yeah.
of the other people
Yeah,
and stuff like that too?
I do, and I think that's why like video has a lot of advantages.
Yeah.
Too, because you can make so much more content with it. But I also think that's kind of like a disadvantage too, because
Yeah.
then you have like an influx of things that you feel like you need to do.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, yeah. I mean, as simple as like, what am I gonna wear? Like as simple as that, right?
Exactly.
Versus
So
if
you
we're
put
not,
makeup on. Nah.
yeah. Versus if we're just shooting audio, who cares?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's funny. That's such a good point because a lot of my guests who came on, they'd be like, do I have to put makeup on? And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
it's just audio only. Like, come in comfortably.
Yeah,
you
we're just talking about the difference of like an audio only versus audio and video.
Yeah.
And I was just making the point that when you make it a video, now you know that your guests dress up for it.
Yeah, yeah,
because I can tell when people come here to podcast with us, I don't try that hard, but this is just me normally.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I can tell when guests come through, or
Yeah.
or I'll use this as an example. When I am a guest on somebody else's, I dress
Yeah.
better.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
it's
yeah.
my own, I don't really care. I
Yeah,
just throw my hat on
exactly.
and I just come through. But when I go on somebody else's podcast, I do dress, and I can notice our guests when they come through. Like I can see like they
Yeah.
selected what they're gonna rock
oh, for
today.
sure.
You
Like
know,
this, like I would
Yeah.
not wear this when I'm recording mine.
Yeah, to go
Like,
talk,
yeah.
right? Just to go talk.
Yeah, exactly.
But that that is the big difference between video and then the next thing we were talking about is how much personally do we enjoy when we listen to podcasts to also watch the facial expressions in the video.
Yeah.
My next question is this, and that's the question to you and to you, is realistically when you guys are taking in podcasts, how many of those are you truly watching? Because to me, I'm listening 90% of the time and watching very minimally. I have to
Yeah.
really, really care who that person is for me to even to watch it. I'll listen all day because I can
Yeah.
do that in the middle of everything.
For sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, like how much do you actually watch?
I started consuming podcasts through YouTube. So most of my consumption is on YouTube. I'm not always watching it though.
Yeah, exactly. It's mostly just
and
listening.
so I discovered audio podcasts later. And so I didn't even think that podcasts exist outside of the video.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of times I don't
Yeah.
watch it, and because I'm always busy. A lot of times it's just playing in the background.
Yeah.
So I'm not watching it too much.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
So-
So yeah,
Yeah.
for you too, do you mostly just listen?
Same. Yeah, all of the podcasts that I started listening to was strictly just audio.
Okay,
and
just
then
audio. Mm-hmm.
throughout the years, then they started doing video. And I think it's fun. It's fun to like see the people
Yeah.
talking and interacting, and like you said, facial expressions and everything
Yeah.
like that. But I also feel like I can kind of hear it too. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So I'm a strong Spotify
Yeah.
podcast listener. But yeah, if I play it ever on YouTube, it's just because I want to see like what's going on.
Yeah.
Like why are they laughing or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I think.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I think there's now being on the other side too, as I think there is there's a clips components to the video where I think there's a lot of consumption of our, especially Hmong content is consumed on Facebook.
Yes.
So I think the video component, I think that's where it does well because our Facebook does 10 times the numbers that our Instagram or our
Sure.
YouTube does.
Yeah,
You know,
for
it's
sure,
really,
for sure.
it's going from 10 to 100, but
Yeah.
it's so I think the video plays a big part in that whereas like you're able to just push out clips and you're able to just push out content like crazy.
I think video is also nice because it lets you market your face.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you are the host, right?
Yeah, for
You are the
sure.
host. So if you want people to know who you are as a podcast, and people need to know who is behind it.
Yeah.
As we were talking about this, I was thinking about audio only, and like you were saying that you're able to feel the energy through audio, and I feel like that would be, as a creator, an extra challenge.
Yeah.
Because you can't see me, right? You can
Very
only
true.
listen to me. So if I want to show excitement, I need to almost purposely speak in a way that
Sure.
Yeah.
that screams excitement,
Yeah.
so that it's like an audiobook.
Right.
When you listen to an audiobook, if the reader of that book sucks, that book is gonna suck.
Yeah,
But if the
yeah.
reader is like, can make you feel emotions through their
Right.
voice,
Yeah.
so that's even more challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight audio I think
Very
is
true.
even more challenging.
Yeah.
Because video you can kind of, you have another vehicle to to entertain, which is the visual aspect, So.
Well, I think you do a great job on your audio.
Oh,
For me,
thanks.
I'm a physical speaker and I
Sure.
stutter, and so if to just listen to me on audio would be tough.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
It forces you to refine your speaking,
Yeah,
your
yeah.
your skills too, right? Because you're doing audio only, so
Yeah.
so if
It takes
like,
a lot though. I like clip everything and I'm like, okay, re-record.
okay, so
Yeah.
so let's talk about that.
Sure.
Your process, you go back and refine a lot.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Specifically, my first episode, I was like, oh, like it's not giving what I wanted to
Okay.
give,
Yeah.
And so I recorded that episode probably like 10 times.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I was just like, man, like I felt like my first episode was kind of like the face of my podcast.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
of
Like,
course,
it's
for
like,
sure. First
if people are
impressions.
yeah, exactly. If people are gonna listen to me, I need to sound like I'm really passionate,
Yeah.
you know. And so, and obviously it's just little things, right? Like I wanted to say this way and not like
Yeah.
sound so sad about it, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think it's really important though to really like fine tune the time when you podcast or when you record, I think like straight out in the morning I cannot,
Yeah.
like I have to like talk
Yeah.
and I have to like, sing and just like do
Yeah,
things
you
to like warm
be
up my
warmed up,
voice.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like I cannot do it at the end of the day
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
I'm way
you're
too
tired,
exhausted
yeah.
from everything, So middle day is usually like fine, great time
Yeah.
because then you're still awake and you're energized and your voice is ready and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, we're always curious about the process because obviously Peng and I,
still so new at this,
and
yeah.
like Peng was saying, the nice thing is like when you have somebody that you co-host with, now you can bounce back idea, right?
Yeah.
So, but we talk about that a lot. Like, how do we do our creative process? Like, I've always been a fan of really organic, which is why I don't like to send questions too much. And you said that you do, and everybody's got their own creative process.
Wow.
And if it works for you, it works for you. So my philosophy is just I like to meet somebody as is, right?
Sure,
Yeah.
I need to. I want to like know. I want to ask you questions, just like if I just met you at the bar.
Yeah.
Like, yo, I can ask
Yeah.
you questions,
Right.
and I don't know what to expect in the question.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes when people have given me, when I've been a guest on a podcast and they give me questions, well, then that gives me too much time to refine my answers too.
Yeah.
And so when I show up, it's almost like I'm presenting
Right.
what my answers are
Yeah.
versus when somebody just says, okay, we're just going to talk about whatever.
Yeah.
And it catches me off guard a little bit, which can make it difficult, right? So
Yeah.
without a questionnaire, so like I asked my wife this question, would you rather have a questionnaire or not? And it depends what kind of person you are. So
Yeah.
like, let me ask you, since you're
Sure,
here,
sure.
we didn't give you questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that, for you as the guest,
Yeah.
does that make you more nervous or less nervous? Because
Yeah.
some people like
For
preparation.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm a preparation gal. So
Okay.
Okay.
I was very
Yeah.
nervous when you sent me just
Yeah.
like the bit. I was like, okay, sure,
Yeah.
like that's fine. But I also know that you both are very intentional about what you guys are asking too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I wasn't as nervous. Like
Right.
had I
Yeah.
been asked to go on a like
Well, let's
white
say we-
person's podcast,
yeah.
with no questions, then I'd be very nervous about
Yeah.
what I'm supposed to answer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing that Peng and I try to do a lot is we're not gonna trap anybody.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
inviting anybody to be here and then be like,
No.
hey, what do you think about abortion? Like
Right.
nothing
Yeah.
crazy like that.
Exactly.
Like
Oh my
we're never gonna do that
Yeah.
because that would just be unfair.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it would be
Yeah.
unfair to do that to a guest. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I was just
And-
curious because like you said, some people like preparation.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. And I think some guests, depending on what we're gonna talk to them about, then we will like give them a premise. Like I kind of gave you a premise, like, hey,
Yeah.
talk about your podcast,
For
talk about
sure.
like your creative process. But like depending on the guest, and if we want to talk to them about something very intentional, then we, we're not coming up with questions, but like for sure like a premise or something, so that they can at least wrap their brain around.
The only
it, or,
challenging
like,
thing
we're
about not having
surprising.
questions is that we have to constantly be stirring our minds
Yeah.
while we're
Yes.
talking,
For
right?
sure.
Because
Yeah.
like as we're talking, you're also formulating your own questions in your
Right.
mind at the same
Yeah.
time as we're
Yeah,
talking.
for
And so as we
sure.
do it, now the benefit that we have is there's two of us.
There's
So
two.
when
Yeah.
he's talking, I can start thinking about what my next question is,
Yeah.
which is why it's hard when you do it by yourself.
Yeah, for
That's why you
sure.
gotta have some preparedness
Yes.
at that
Yeah.
point.
Oh, for sure.
I think if I was doing solo too,
Yeah.
I would have to have at least some 10 bullet points that I read 10 times. Now they're back here, and now I can pop them out when I need
Yeah,
to.
for sure.
Um,
And I think it's nice to not really have any questions, because then the conversation
Can go anywhere, yeah.
can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like specifically with me, I have set questions, and I want to talk about them, right? And so
Yeah.
I want them to be ready to talk about themselves, because
Yeah.
sometimes when you're like on the spot and you're like, oh, I don't know how to talk about myself,
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
don't get to talk about
Yeah.
ourselves a lot, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I do love just like open-ended podcasts like this, because then you really get to know the person
Yeah.
Yeah.
without questions, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I feel like my podcast is very interview-like too.
Yeah.
Like I would love to get to know that other person, what their challenges were, what their achievements were, and I think sometimes you need to think about those things.
Yeah.
And because it's like, oh, like I don't know, maybe should I talk about this one or this one, and just kind of like fine-tuning. the
yeah, because I
process.
think when you're scattered, like the problem I think in open-ended discussion is that it can be kind of chaotic to listen to as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah,
Because the
and-
topics go all over the
Sure.
place.
And our biggest criticism is like, hey, let your guest talk, but because of our format,
Sure.
it's a conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So of
exactly.
course we're gonna be talking a lot,
Yeah.
and then like it's our first time meeting,
Right.
Right. So if I want you to be vulnerable, it's
You
only
have to be
fair.
vulnerable,
Yeah, I
yeah.
have to be
Yes.
vulnerable.
You have to
Oh,
open
so a
up
lot
too
of times
for
we're
you to
like
be open up.
we're
Yes,
repeating a lot
I
of the
can't just
same
ask you a
stories,
question like
you know?
tell me what you think about marriage and
Yeah.
then not tell you anything
Yeah.
about me, because then
Yeah.
you'd be like, you go first, you know,
Yeah.
you go
Yeah.
first, and then however open you are, I'll open up to your energy.
Right.
I'll
Yeah.
match
Oh,
what you're
for
saying,
sure.
you know.
Yeah.
So that's why we have to talk in an open discussion like this. Peng and I have to be the ones
Yeah.
who open up. We have to be the ones that show that we're not afraid to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
and that we're not afraid of like differing opinions.
Yeah.
You know, because
Right.
with Hmong men especially, if I went on another Hmong dude's podcast and you start asking me hard questions, I'd be like, I kind of know Hmong guys from my experience.
And
Some are
without-
really
without
picky.
them sharing anything too, you're gonna be like,
what?
Yeah.
Like if I went to on the Hmong dude's podcast and he's like, what do you think about chicken fighting? I'd be like, wait. Are you for it? Are you
you a
not for it?
cop?
Yeah.
Are you a cop? Hold on. Yeah.
But when we open up first, it gives you the comfort of just knowing,
Yeah.
okay, these dudes are just chatting.
Right.
You know, they're
Yeah.
just trying to
Yeah.
learn stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what we are trying to do. We're just trying to
Yeah.
learn your project. We're trying to learn who are you,
Yeah.
For sure.
what drives you, what's your
Yeah.
motivation, what's your passion.
Yeah.
So, and that's what you've been doing this last hour, is really sharing your idea. And that's what I love about finding out about our guest or Hmong woman is like, what is your passion driving you to do your
Yeah.
podcast? You know, and I think you've shared that
Yeah.
pretty well. You know,
And
so
so we know that you do the podcast. We know you're in school. What else does Ariel like to do?
Oh my gosh. I love traveling.
Okay.
Nice.
I've been traveling a lot recently.
Nice. Where have you gone?
Well, I love going to California.
Okay.
yeah, okay.
So I
Nice.
always go back to California.
Yeah.
We have friends. My partner's family lives over there too. So then
Oh,
we
what-
get to
what
visit
part?
them. Long Beach.
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, yeah. So we get to visit them a lot. So my boyfriend's from Oregon, so
Nice.
I've gone to Oregon once.
Always wanted to.
But not with him.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
okay.
like by myself. I did
Yeah.
a solo trip out there, and then I've gone to New York.
Yeah.
We love going to Chicago. I have family in Arkansas, so we go visit
Yeah.
Arkansas. sometimes.
Awesome.
Where at? Gentry, Little Rock, Fayetteville.
Fayetteville.
Okay. Where the other Hmong people are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there still a lot of Hmong people down in Arkansas?
Yeah.
I know there was like
a lot
a
have
big.
moved to like Tulsa too, Oklahoma,
Okay.
and Kansas.
Okay.
Kansas City.
Because
it's
like I
kinda
think
close.
when we were in high school, there was like the big chicken,
Yeah, the big wave was the early
the
2000s.
Tyson chicken boom,
Yep,
where everybody
yep.
was
Oh,
going down
yeah.
there to start the Tyson,
and then
the chicken farm.
and then people started dispersing because
Yeah.
because I have a lot of family that do that. It's just a lot of work. Like
Yeah.
people didn't I think people didn't realize just
Yeah,
how
when they
much
went
work
down
it
there.
is because you have 30 chickens.
Yeah.
I'm now thinking about
3,000.
20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, for sure. And so out of all those destinations, have you done any travel abroad much or just in
I
country?
haven't.
Okay.
I'd love to. I think that's a goal. I really want to go to Korea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd love to go to Korea. Thailand would be so
Yeah.
fun. I want to bring my grandma back. She's kind of like, no, I don't want to go. So I don't know. Still up for
Yeah.
conversation.
They say that.
Yeah.
That's what all
They say.
that's what moms say. That's what grandmas say. But when you
Yeah.
take them there, they love it.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, travel. So, and then in of all the cities that, okay, here's a question. If you could live in any of those cities you visited with inside of the U.S.,
Gosh.
other than where we are right
Yeah.
here, where would you go?
I'm a city girl through and through.
'Kay.
So New York or Los Angeles
Okay.
would be the place to be. But I am also a very scenic person, so I think I'd be on the West Coast. And
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you know, yeah. So.
Cause yeah, the West Coast like, that's only like a stone's throw away. Yeah.
And it's congested, but you can get away a little bit. So,
Yeah.
like, if you're in LA, you could drive 2-3 hours east or
Yeah.
anywhere. Yeah, you could kind of get away. LA itself is super congested, but you
For
can
sure.
kind of exit.
Yeah.
Versus if you're in New York, there are clearings around, but you're still surrounded by a lot of big cities, whether it be
Yeah.
Philly, DC, Boston, all those
Yeah,
things.
for
You're kind of
sure.
in that old English part
Can I
of
say
this
this?
country.
I haven't been in New York, but I hate LA.
Oh, really?
Hate
LA
it.
is super congested, and
Yeah.
LA is, LA. To me, LA is not as pretty as what it's painted to be, but I
Sure.
don't mind Cali. I do like
Yeah.
Cali.
Yo, yeah,
Yeah, I do
the
like
weather,
Cali.
yeah.
I've gone. I used to go to San Diego all the time, and I do like it. So if you asked me in my 20s,
Yeah.
I would have loved LA.
Okay.
Now that I'm a little bit older, I like still that vibe, but a little more chilled out. Yeah, because LA is a lot's happening.
So
For
maybe
sure.
You
like
know,
the
but if I was
suburb
your
of
age
LA.
at 24, I'd
For
go
sure.
back in a heartbeat to
Yeah.
LA. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'd probably choose an area. I really love San Diego. If you've ever been there, I love San Diego. It's a little bit more chilled out.
Sure.
Still a big city, you know, but yeah. No, New York is awesome too. I really enjoyed New York
Yeah,
as well.
New York is beautiful.
New York is cool.
There's like so much to do in such a small
Yeah.
area, you know. So yeah, that
Yeah.
was really
That's
fun.
what I love. You can just walk
Yeah.
down the block and there's like 6 restaurants
for
on that
sure.
same block.
Yes.
Yeah.
Versus in Minnesota, like I tell my family when they come from out of the country,
Mm-hmm.
I say, don't think that you're coming to New York or Chicago
Yeah.
or LA. Like here, we need to get a car to get
Yeah.
anywhere. If
Yeah.
you're thinking about the subway, there's no such
There's
thing.
no
We have a
such
light
thing.
rail. If you want to go to the MOA, you
Yeah.
get a light rail, but we don't take the light rail here. We
Yeah.
just drive.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know, because like my cousins in France that live in Paris, like some of those guys, they never drive because they don't need to. Driving is
Sure,
more of a
right.
headache.
Yeah.
Like, if you live in New York, why would you? It's more of a headache to drive. It takes like 3 hours to drive. I'll just take the subway. It takes me an hour and a half. Yeah, I got to deal with more people.
Right.
Yeah, I got to deal with a few crazies and stuff. But but at least I get there faster and it makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Also, like, worst place I've ever been was like Chicago. I think that's the most overrated city.
Yeah.
ever.
Really?
Everybody talks about Chicago like it's this great place. I went down there. One, it's a 6-hour drive, and then 2, you go there. They wanted to go see this big metal bean, and I was just like, "What do we? It's a bean.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a metal bean. You see, it's reflective. You see yourself. So what? Whatever." And then I got there, and then like this giant rats.
Yeah.
Like I saw a giant.
So you
rat.
don't like the cities?
I don't know. I think Chicago is just like a bigger and dirtier version of Minneapolis. And I love
Sure.
Minneapolis. I
Sure.
grew up there. I love Minneapolis. But I think like I don't know. I didn't like I didn't like Chicago. I thought it was super
Do you
overrated.
like big cities? Because
I-
every big city is gonna have rats
I don't
and be
know.
dirty for the
There-
most part.
I've never seen a rat in Minneapolis, downtown Minneapolis though.
No, that's
I mean, it's too cold.
It's too cold,
It's probably
yeah.
too
Yeah.
cold. Yeah. But so like I enjoy Minneapolis. That's
You
about
won't
as
like
big as
New
I
York
I
then.
can get.
There's
Yeah.
rats
Yeah.
everywhere.
That's what I hear too.
For me, big cities, I like if I saw a rat to me, it's gross, but it's character. That's how I look
Is
at
it
it.
character?
Yeah, to me, it's. I mean, that's what the city.
Yeah.
That's what that place
okay,
is like.
okay,
you
all
know?
right,
So
all
like,
right, all right,
if I go
all
to
right.
New York and I see a rat, I'm like, damn, New York is crazy, you know. And so, like those things to me, they paint the picture of what this place is about,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
I guess
But,
so I grew up in the city and I moved out to the country to start a
Okay.
farm.
Yeah.
And so we're out in Oak Grove right now. Like,
Okay.
I think for me, it's just I wanted to get away from the hustle and bustle.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I've been grinding in in the city my whole life, and I just want things to be slowed down a little bit.
you can tell there's a generational gap on this side of the table.
Yeah,
we're like
yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit
yeah.
older versus
Yeah.
you're 24. And if I go back
She's
to
talking
my
about-
stuff at
yeah.
24, I mean, yeah, I love this city. I mean,
Yeah.
I still love it.
Yeah,
I
she's
still
talking
love
about
the
big
city,
city,
now.
yeah.
But yeah, at 24, I absolutely loved
For sure.
the city.
Yeah.
Like, I was living in Northeast, you know,
Yeah.
and I absolutely loved the
Oh,
city
Northeast
life.
is nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I was living Northeast, and I think at that time is when I went to Dominican Republic with some dude that I barely knew,
Oh,
and
that's
Yeah.
so cool.
slept at a bar because we didn't have
That's
any
the
money.
time to do
and-
that.
Yeah.
That's the time
Yeah.
to do that. But so what do you? So 24.
Mm-hmm.
What are you young people doing nowadays? Because we're old, we're
my gosh.
married, we're losers.
we don't
we
go
don't.
out.
Yeah,
Wrong
yeah.
person. I
Yeah.
don't go out. I don't
Are you
do
pretty
anything.
laid back? Like, you don't really go out
I'm
too
super
much?
chill.
Yeah.
I go out like when we have family or friends
Yeah,
that
okay.
come to town. You know,
Yeah.
I'm so focused on my career.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah,
you know,
no,
and then my
nothing wrong
work.
with
You know,
that.
and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And so I'm kind of like. I don't go out as often. I love reading, so I'll go to like coffee shops
Yeah.
within the cities
Okay.
and just kind of explore there. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not popping out anywhere.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
chill.
nothing wrong with
Everybody's
that.
everybody's
Yeah.
different. I mean, I think I like to say that when I was 24, I was going out too much. If I could go
Yeah.
back, I think I would have just chilled out a little bit more too.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's expensive.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
it's true.
Oh my
I think
God.
it's changed too. I feel like it's changed. Is it just me, or do you feel like it's changed a little bit? Where like I feel like the new generation, like behind me, you guys are a little bit more chill sometimes. Like it's cool to just chill and kick
Yeah.
back.
Yeah,
Versus like I feel like even my sisters who are older than me, it's the club. We go
Yeah.
to the club. We go to the club,
Yeah.
and then
Well, we
me
also
was
don't
still
have any
kind
clubs
of.
here
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
don't-
yeah.
no,
I
you're
think
right.
the
You're right.
environment, the
We're-
vibes changed.
We're
But is
also
that
at a period in
do we
time
not
where-
go to the clubs because the clubs are gone, or did the clubs disappear because we stopped going?
No,
You
I
know?
think yeah. Well, I mean,
Because I know
downtown
what
is
you
kind of
mean.
dead.
Yeah, I know what you mean,
Downtown is
because
kind of dead now.
when we were of age, that was kind of when things were on downhill. Like, and now there's not even a uptown. There's not even like a downtown
No.
scene. I don't think anymore. I think the place to go now is like Northeast, kind of the
Yeah,
more
North
hip, like
Loop.
small,
North
small
Loop is
bars.
cool.
Like, yeah. But
I think COVID had a lot to do with
Yes,
that.
Yeah,
you
it
know,
did.
like
Yeah,
it sucked because we turned, like my peers, we turned 21 during COVID.
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
there's like
Yeah.
nothing we could
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
yeah.
I
So
know.
talk about that.
Oh my gosh, it was weird.
How was
like,
COVID for you
we were
guys?
supposed to be going out to the bar,
Yeah,
showing
yeah.
my
Yeah.
ID. Like I'm 21 for the first time, but yeah, I mean, I just had a little small get together with a couple
Yeah.
of friends and
Yeah.
family, and that was it.
I thought
Judging
about
you.
that. Yeah.
Judging you in the middle of the pandemic?
No.
I'm judging you. I'm just kidding.
You know, I really thought about that because when we were going through COVID, I was already, much older, already in my career and everything. But I was like, you know what? If I would have been 21 during COVID, all
Yeah,
those
that'd be
rules,
tough.
fuck that.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
I was 21 and I was COVID, I would be like, fuck all those rules, dude.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's what probably most 21-year-olds
Yeah, I
felt
think
like.
that's what the most
Yeah,
of
if
them
you're a
say.
21-year-old, the last thing you want to do is just be stuck in your house all day
Yeah,
long.
that's gotta
When
be
you're 30,
brutal.
you almost take it like a, oh, whatever. It's,
Yeah,
it's
I
what we
kind of
gotta
like
do.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
But if
this
I
is
was
kinda
21
nice.
and you
Just
told me
staying
I
home.
can't go out,
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit up my homie and be like, "Yo, where's the house party at?"
Yeah.
Like, we're just gonna go. I'm still gonna go
For
do it
sure.
because you're 21. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to live life. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be
Yeah.
scared about something that,
Yeah. And there,
it's-
there's an invincibility.
But I
you
feel,
know?
I feel
Yeah.
for you guys. I
Yeah.
feel for you guys to at that period in time of that specific age you were at to go through that.
Yeah.
I feel for y'all because those are important years to like be out and
Sure.
about, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's
Yeah.
where you like discover yourself
Exactly.
and like
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel for y'all for
Yeah.
that for sure.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, so we're at an hour. Hmong Womxn Thriving Podcast. Where can
And-
we find you?
Yeah, where can we find? And please spell it out because when I looked you up,
Sure.
he told me about it, and I was like, let me look it up, and then I found other,
Sure.
and then I was like, oh, is it this one that's spelled like this? So
Yeah.
please spell
Yeah,
it
yeah,
out so
yeah.
that people
Sure.
can find the right one.
It's Hmong, so HMONG, and then woman, so WOMXN.
There you go.
And then thriving is just
Yeah.
Hriving.
Sorry, not
Was the
spelling
X
bee.
intentional, or was that for anything?
No, it
or
wasn't intentional. I kind of
just looks cool?
yeah, it just looks pretty.
Yeah.
But I guess it's open ended. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very much. It doesn't have to be just women. It can be men. It can be anyone who pertains to any sex. So.
And which platforms are people able to find you
So
at?
you can find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm active on all those socials.
Okay.
That's awesome.
So if you're a Hmong woman out there or Hmong man that
Yeah.
believe you have something cool or fun or interesting to you want to say and put it out there, please hit her up
Yes.
and let her know that you're out there. And maybe if it lines up, you can help her and in turn also get your message out there. But for me, I don't have much more. Thank you for
Yeah.
taking the
Oh my
time in the
gosh,
morning.
no,
It's
thank you so
a
much for
weekend morning, and
inviting
you're
me, and I love what you guys are doing. I really appreciate you guys just like having this, and like you said earlier, you know, like where our community is like thirsting for this type of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's so good to just see Hmong men specifically
Yeah.
just like doing what you guys are doing
Yeah.
and encouraging our community, you know, because I don't think we've had that for a very long time, and so thank you guys for doing
well.
what you
Thank
guys
you
are
for what
doing.
you do
Oh
too,
my
because
gosh.
Yeah.
we need to hear perspective from all angles.
Sure,
Yes.
for
Whether
sure.
it be 35-year-old Hmong male to 24-year-old female,
Yeah.
like I want to hear all the
Yeah,
angles of this
for
Hmong
sure.
community so
Yeah.
that we all know each other better, right? And understand where we all come from
Yes,
and have a
exactly.
common neutral ground.
Yeah.
So thank you for
Yeah,
their time.
thank you, and
Of
thank you for all the work
course.
that you
Yes.
do.
Oh,
so.
thanks. Thank you.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
Tuning out. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having
Yeah.